He used her as a pawn, but when the truth emerged, he was the one who fell first. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. She sat across from the most feared man in the city, her fingers trembling on her lap as the skyline burned gold behind him. His office was vast, immaculate, silent, yet the only thing she could hear was her own heartbeat. He slid a thin contract across the polished table as if it weighed nothing, but his voice landed like a death sentence. "Sign it," he said quietly, "or your family loses everything in 24 hours. There was no threat in his tone, no cruelty either, just an unshakable certainty that he could make those words true and more. Her eyes raced down the clauses printed in stark black ink: temporary marriage, complete secrecy, mandatory public appearances, no questions asked. Each line tightened around her like invisible chains. "Why me?" she whispered. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, gaze narrowing. "Because you're the only one who fits the role. A beat, and because you don't have the luxury of saying no." That was the moment she understood she wasn't a partner, nor a wife, nor anything close. She was a pawn stepping into a game she didn't know the rules of, and he had already started playing. The elevator ride down felt like sinking through water, heavy, muffled, unreal. She clutched the contract to her chest, paper creasing under her grip as if it were the only anchor keeping her from collapsing. Her knees shook when the door slid open. She barely registered the marble floors, the expensive scent, the guards watching her leave. Everything blurred into a haze of disbelief and dread. Only hours ago her world had been small, a cramped apartment, overdue bills, a stack of notices threatening to swallow her family whole. She'd been juggling part-time jobs, telling her mother it would be okay, hugging her younger brother when he asked why the electricity kept cutting out. It wasn't okay. They were drowning. And he knew. The man who now owned her family's debt knew exactly where to strike. When the mysterious representative approached her at the grocery store 2 nights earlier, an older man in a black suit, too polite, too calm, she should have run. But he'd said he had an opportunity that would save her family, and desperation makes fools of the kind-hearted. Now she understood what the opportunity truly was: a cage wrapped in silk. The car waited outside the tower. She stepped in because she had no choice left, because every road led back to him anyway. The driver didn't speak. The city lights flickered past the window, cold and distant, as if the world had already moved on without her. When she reached home, her mother was asleep on the couch, medical bills scattered around her like fallen leaves. Her brother was curled up with a textbook still open. She wanted to shake them awake, tell them everything, ask for advice, cry into someone's shoulder. But the contract's bold print echoed in her head: absolute confidentiality. She tucked the papers into her old backpack, went to her room and locked the door. The air grew thick. She sank onto the edge of her bed and stared at nothing. The weight of it all finally slammed into her. She was getting married to a man she barely knew, a man who didn't care about her, only the purpose she served. Her phone buzzed. A single message lit the screen: "Your presence is required tomorrow at 8:00 a.m. A driver will arrive. Do not refuse." No signature, but she knew exactly who it came from. She pressed a hand to her mouth, steadying her breathing. She couldn't fall apart. Not now. Survival demanded obedience. Her family's future depended on what she did next. She opened the contract again, her eyes stinging, as she reread the name printed at the top: Aiden Knight. The overnight legend of the financial world. The man rumored to destroy companies with a single phone call. The man who had looked at her with unsettling calculation, as if he already knew every choice she would make. The same man who mentioned her father's name in a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear. Her blood turned cold. What did he mean by "especially because of her father"? What past did her father, sweet, quiet, gentle, have with a man like Aiden Knight? Why did he need her specifically for this role? No answers, only more fear. She sat there until dawn began softening the sky. She barely slept. She kept replaying his words, his tone, his command. Sign it. You have no choice. And so, as the first light slipped through her curtains, she made the hardest decision of her life. She dressed carefully, hid the contract inside her coat, and stood before the mirror. Her reflection looked unfamiliar, someone bracing herself for war. A horn sounded outside. The driver had arrived. She grabbed her bag, took one last look at her sleeping family, and stepped out into a future she never asked for. Behind her in the quiet apartment hallway, her phone buzzed again. Do not be late. From now on your life is not your own. The mansion was too quiet, so quiet it felt hostile. She stepped inside with the driver trailing behind her, her backpack clutched like a shield. Marble floors stretched endlessly, polished to a cold gleam. The ceiling arched higher than anything she had ever seen in a home. Portraits lined the walls, their painted eyes following her as if judging the intruder in cheap shoes and a trembling stance. A woman in a gray uniform approached her gaze sharp enough to cut. You're the new one, she said flatly. Follow me. Not a name, not a greeting, just the new one. She walked behind the woman, each step echoing. The house felt intentionally designed to make her feel small. They passed a sitting room filled with glass sculptures, a dining hall longer than her entire apartment, and a staircase curling like a piece of art. Everything glimmered. Everything whispered one truth: she didn't belong here. Her assigned room was at the far end of a long hallway. The woman opened the door without looking at her. This is yours. Don't go anywhere you're not permitted, especially not the second floor. The second floor? She glanced toward the stairway. Why especially that? Before she could ask, the woman was already walking away. Alone, she stepped inside the room. It was beautiful, bigger than her living room and bedroom, combined with a balcony overlooking the garden. But the beauty felt wrong. It was like being placed in a glass box for display. Then she noticed it, a thick booklet sitting on the desk. She approached with dread, guidelines for the role of Mrs. Knight. Her stomach dropped. She opened the first page. Approved wardrobe palette, approved hairstyles, approved speaking manner, approved posture for public appearances. Her hands trembled as she flipped through. It went on and on: how to hold a champagne flute, how to greet executives, how to smile calmly but not warmly. This wasn't a marriage. This was an adoption into a rigid machine. She was still staring at page 10 when a soft thud made her look up. A trimmed, precise shadow fell across the doorway. She turned. Aiden Knight stood there, one hand casually in his pocket, the other holding a phone. He took in the room, the booklet, and then her. You'll need to memorize it, he said. We have an event in 48 hours. She swallowed. I didn't know I had to attend anything. You do now. He didn't step inside, didn't smile, didn't pretend to ease her fear. You'll be trained tomorrow. Clothes are already chosen. Don't be late. He turned to go, but she found her voice. Why can't I go to the second floor? He paused. For a second, just a heartbeat, his jaw tightened. Then he said without turning back, Because I said so. And he walked away. Her knees weakened. She sank onto the bed as the door clicked shut. Fear settled in her chest like a stone. The next morning, 4 strangers entered her room at 7 a.m. Sharp, a stylist, a makeup artist, a hair specialist, and some kind of etiquette instructor in a strict black dress. None of them greeted her. They simply began. Her hair was pulled, twisted, sprayed. Her face was brushed and powdered. Her clothes were lifted and dropped as they assessed her size like a mannequin. She tried not to flinch. When the tailor accidentally pricked her finger with a pin, she hissed softly. The stylist glared. Hold still. But from across the room, a low voice cut through the tension. She's bleeding. She jerked her head up. Aiden stood near the doorway, arms crossed, eyes fixed on her injured hand. His tone was controlled, but something underneath it, something sharp, made the stylist pale. I apologize, Mr. Knight, the stylist stammered. Aiden didn't respond. His eyes lingered on her another moment too long before he disappeared into the hall, as quietly as he'd come. Her heartbeat hammered in her chest. Why was he watching? How long had he been there? The team finished, leaving her in a fitted dress she would have never dared touch in a store. It hugged her in ways that made her self-conscious. She barely recognized the woman in the mirror. The etiquette instructor lifted her chin with one finger. Remember, your job is not to be yourself. Your job is to be adequate. Adequate. Her stomach twisted. By afternoon, she was brought to a private lounge where Aiden waited. The moment she walked in, his gaze swept over her cold, analytical calculating. "You'll do," he said. She clenched her fingers to keep from shaking. "For what exactly?" "For tomorrow." He motioned toward a televised news channel. A graphic was being prepared. Major merger announcement, CEO to introduce his wife. Her breath died in her throat. "I didn't agree to be announced publicly," she said, and yet he replied, "You will be." She felt heat rising to her face. "You make every decision for me, don't you?" "That's how this works." His calmness made it worse. "You can't keep controlling everything," she hissed. "This isn't a partnership. This is a prison." His eyes locked on hers, unreadable. Then he said softly, "If I don't control everything, you won't survive this." Her blood ran cold. What does that mean? But he turned away, ending the conversation. Hours later, she stepped into the hallway outside his office. Voices drifted from inside Aiden and his lawyer. She cannot know, especially not about her father. Her heart plummeted. She backed away before anyone noticed pulse roaring in her ears. Father, her father, what did they mean? Why was he involved? What did they hide? Her phone vibrated. A new email. No sender. "Don't trust him. Your father is already part of this game." She stared at the screen, dread clawing up her spine. This wasn't just about a contract or a merger. She was trapped in something far deeper, something dangerous, and her father was at the center of it. She didn't know it yet, but tonight would be the last night she trusted anyone. She woke before dawn with the uneasy feeling that someone had been standing outside her door. The air felt disturbed, as if it held the shape of a presence that had only just vanished. The door was cracked open by an inch. She hadn't left it that way. Her breath hitched. She tiptoed to the hallway, but it was empty quiet except for the distant hum of the mansion waking. When she turned back toward her room, she heard its slow, steady footsteps retreating around the corner, heavy enough to be a man's, heavy enough to be his. Why had he been there, and why leave without knocking? She shut the door quickly, leaning back against it until her heartbeat settled. By noon, her second day of training began. The team returned cold, efficient, emotionless. They fitted her into another dress, pinned fabric against her ribs, adjusted her posture like she was an object that needed tightening. Aiden wasn't in the room, but she felt watched. When the tailor brushed against her shoulder too harshly, she winced. The woman scowled, ready to snap, but the atmosphere shifted, a sharp, quiet tension, like the room itself inhaled. Aiden stood in the doorway. He didn't announce himself. He didn't clear his throat. He was simply there, silent and observing, eyes locked on the tiny bead of blood forming on her fingertip. "She's bleeding," he said, voice low but razor-edged. The tailor froze, paling. I apologize. Be careful." His gaze didn't move from her. "She's not disposable." Her lips parted in shock, but before she could speak or even fully register what he'd said, he was gone. The team worked in fearful silence after that, fearful not of her, but of him. Yet the words he'd spoken echoed in her chest long after the last pin was removed. Not disposable. Why say that? Why watch her at all? Later that afternoon, she was brought to a private ballroom to practice walking the red carpet for the upcoming merger event. A wide strip of crimson fabric stretched across polished floors, flanked by bright lights and fake camera flashes to simulate a premiere. The instructor barked orders. "Straighten your shoulders, slow steps, relax your hands, look confident, not desperate." She did her best walking toward the simulated crowd, but when she reached the midpoint, a stagehand carrying a tray bumped into her. She stumbled. Before she could fall, a hand gripped her wrist firm, unyielding, and pulled her sharply into a warm, solid chest. Aiden's. The world seemed to pause. His fingers wrapped around her wrist like a vow, his other hand steadying her back. Her breath caught as she felt the controlled strength in his arms. Then he released her just as quickly. "Careful," he said, stepping back. "If you fall in front of the cameras, I'll have to clean up the mess." But his voice wasn't annoyed. It wasn't cold either. It trembled with something else, something he forced himself to bury. She knew because she had felt the tremor in his hand when he caught her. And yet he walked away as if the moment meant nothing. Her schedule tightened that day. She couldn't step outside without someone tailing her. She wasn't allowed to walk alone even inside the house. The second her path veered from her assigned route, a staff member appeared out of nowhere. By late afternoon, she felt suffocated. Trying to breathe, she wandered toward the grand stairway. The second floor loomed like a sealed vault. Something was up there, something she wasn't supposed to see. She took one step toward it, a voice behind her. "You can't go there." She spun. Aiden's assistant stood at the foot of the stairs, his expression unusually tense. "Why not?" she demanded. His eyes flickered toward the hidden cameras before he answered. "Because the CEO said you're not allowed." She opened her mouth to argue, but stopped when she noticed the assistant's phone screen lighting up her picture flashing on a tracking app labeled Security Perimeter Alert. Subject deviated from route. Her stomach knotted. So she really was being monitored. By him. But for what purpose? Feeling trapped, she asked for permission to step outside with an escort to clear her head. 2 guards accompanied her to the car and then to a high-end supermarket down the road. That's when she saw him again. The strange man from the grocery store. The one who had watched her too closely. The one whose presence made her skin crawl. He stood in the dairy aisle pretending to check labels, but his eyes never left her. Every aisle she entered, he was there. Every corner she turned, he appeared just before she did. She grabbed her guard's arm. "There's someone." But when they turned, the man was gone. Back at the mansion, she stepped out of the car, only to find Aiden waiting by the entrance, expression dark as a storm gathering. "Why?" he said quietly. "Did you go off your route?" Her breath stalled. "I just needed air. You attract attention when you wander." "From who?" she snapped. "Why are you following me? Why am I the one who gets controlled?" His jaw flexed. Then he stepped closer. "Because it keeps you alive." Alive. Not safe, not comfortable. Alive. "What does that mean?" she whispered. He didn't answer. That night she paced her room, the walls feeling smaller with every minute. She caught sight of the balcony doors and stepped outside for some air. Moonlight shimmered across the pool, but the reflection in the water wasn't hers. It was his. The man from the store. He was standing just beyond the gates, unmoving, watching her. She stumbled back in horror. When she turned, she collided with Aiden. He was right behind her, gaze locked on the intruder outside. "He won't stop," Aiden murmured. "No matter what I do." She grabbed his arm. "Who is he? What does he want with me?" For a moment he actually looked, afraid for her. But he only whispered, "Not tonight," and walked away. She watched him go, heart pounding. The pieces weren't fitting. The secrets were growing. And the man who supposedly didn't belong to her was the only one standing between her and the darkness outside. The ballroom shimmered under golden chandeliers, but the shine felt harsh rather than beautiful. She stepped inside beside Aiden, her heart pounding as hundreds of wealthy socialites turned to look at her. Their eyes measured her, weighed her, dismissed her. Aiden's hand rested lightly on her back, not protective, not affectionate, just a touch meant for the cameras. The moment the flashes erupted, he leaned down and whispered, "Smile." She forced the corners of her lips upward. When the cameras shifted away, his hand dropped instantly. The distance between them grew colder. Every step she took felt like walking into a pit full of glittering knives. A group of elegantly dressed women waved her over with bright smiles. She hesitated, but their insistence left her no graceful escape. She approached hoping for kindness, or at least neutrality. "Congratulations," one woman cooed, her diamond earrings dangling. "You've risen so far, from wherever it is you came from." Another tapped her glass thoughtfully. "It's impressive, really. Some people spend their whole lives climbing and never reach your altitude." Her tone dripped with insinuation. "Altitude," the third repeated with a laugh. "That's one word for it." The first woman leaned closer. "Tell us, dear, how does someone like you manage to capture Aiden Knight's attention?" Before she could respond, a woman she recognized, the powerful business associate who clearly despised her, joined the circle. She gave a slow, predatory smile. "He didn't choose her," she said loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "He bought her." The table erupted in soft, cruel laughter. Heat flooded her cheeks. She gripped her clutch so tightly her knuckles turned white. "Oh, don't look so upset," someone added lightly. "It's not your fault. We all play the roles we're given." Then, in a dramatic flick of her wrist, the business associate tipped her wine glass, accidentally, deliberately sending a splash of red cascading down the front of the girl's pale dress. A chorus of gasps followed. "Oh dear," the woman murmured. "You should watch where you stand." Humiliation crashed over her, drowning out everything else. She looked up toward the mezzanine and froze. Aiden stood above, hands on the railing, watching. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't stop any of it. Her chest tightened painfully. He wasn't going to help her. Moments later, Aiden walked past, the group expression unreadable. She turned away from him, ashamed and furious. But as he passed, she saw his fingers brush his earpiece, barely noticeable to anyone else. The women who had been smirking suddenly stiffened as their phones began buzzing simultaneously. Confusion washed across their faces. One gasped as she read her screen. Another paled entirely. A third muttered, "Oh, no, this can't be happening. You look sick," someone whispered to the associate who had spilled wine. "What's wrong?" The woman's voice trembled. "Our deal, the investor he just pulled out." A second phone buzzed. "Mine too," another whispered. My audit just got flagged." Fear rippled through them. She stepped back, shock consuming her. Aiden kept walking, expression still impassive. He hadn't ignored her humiliation. He'd punished it, quietly, brutally. But why do it in secret? Why let her believe he didn't care before she could make sense of any of it? A cold voice broke through her thoughts. "You don't belong here." She spun around and nearly screamed. The man from the grocery store, the one who'd watched her for days. He stood only a few feet away near a column half hidden in the shadows, his lips curled in a mocking smile. "You're more trouble than you look," he murmured, just like him. Her knees weakened. She forced herself to stumble backward. "How did you get in here?" she whispered. He tilted his head. "A room full of billionaires. It's easy to slip in if you know where the cracks are." Then his smile sharpened. "But I'm not here for them. I'm here for you." Her breath hitched. Aiden's voice suddenly cut through the air, cold and sharp. "Is there a problem?" And she spun. He stood behind her, gaze fixed not on her, but on the shadows where the man had been. But the man was already gone. "Invisible," she whispered shakily. He's watching me." Aiden's hands clenched at his sides. "You shouldn't have wandered off." "I didn't. He found me." Her voice wavered. "Who is he, Aiden? Not here," he said tightly. "Come with me." He took her by the arm and led her out into the hall. Hours later, the party wound down. She tried to leave early, but 2 guards blocked her path. Orders from Mr. Knight, one said, "You're not permitted to leave alone." She felt the humiliation rise again, different from before, but sharper, angrier. "I'm not a prisoner," she hissed. The guard didn't react. "This is for your safety." Safety. The word felt hollow. She stormed away, heading for a quiet hallway near the service entrance, anything to breathe away from the suffocating luxury. But as soon as she rounded the corner, she heard voices beyond a half-open door. Aiden's voice, cold, controlled, speaking to a powerful executive. "She's necessary," he said. "Her father is the reason the merger must happen." Her heart stopped. Her father was the reason for all of this. The executive asked, "Does she know?" "No," Aiden said. "And she can't, not yet. If she learns the truth, everything will collapse." Her breath shattered in her chest. She stumbled back from the door, feeling as though the ground had vanished beneath her feet. Necessary, because of her father, not because of her. The humiliation at the party was nothing compared to this. He hadn't just used her, he'd used her father too. She fled down the hallway, dizziness blurring her vision. Outside the ballroom, the cool night air hit her like a slap. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A new message. "No sender. He lied to you. Your father is in danger. Run before he uses you both." Her pulse roared in her ears. She looked back at the glowing windows of the ballroom, where Aiden stood, framed in gold light, talking to people who mattered. She wasn't one of them. And now she knew the man she was forced to marry didn't just control her future. He held the strings to her past and her family's ruin. The hallway was empty when she stumbled out of the ballroom, but the echo of the stranger's words still scraped against her ribs like broken glass. Her father was the reason Aiden had dragged her into this. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady the panic clawing upward. She barely made it 10 steps before the man from the grocery store appeared again, materializing from the shadows as if he'd been waiting. Going somewhere, he asked with a grin that felt like poison. She froze. "What do you want from me?" "What everyone wants," he said, leaning close. "Leverage." His breath brushed her ear. "Just like your father used to be. Just like you are now." Her pulse roared. "You don't know anything about my father." He chuckled. "Oh, I know more than you do. Much more." Before she could respond, heavy footsteps thundered down the hall. One of Aiden's guards sprinted toward them. The man in the shadow stepped back, melted into the doorway, and vanished before the guard arrived. "Miss, are you all right?" the guard asked. But she couldn't answer. She couldn't breathe. She was too busy breaking. Later that night, she stood in Aiden's office, the overhead lights casting sharp shadows across the marble floor. He faced her from behind his desk, posture, rigid jaw, tight. "You disappeared during an event," he said. "My team tells me a stranger confronted you. Why didn't you call for security?" She laughed, a brittle, humorless sound. "Because I didn't know which side the danger was coming from." His eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said, digging the nails into her palms. "I heard you. Earlier. Talking about my father." A muscle jumped in his jaw. She stepped closer. "What did he do to you? What did he do to your company? Why am I here? Aiden. Why me?" Silence crawled between them. "Tell me," she whispered. He looked at her then, not coldly, but with something heavy, almost pained. "You shouldn't have overheard that. That's not an answer. Because you're not ready for the truth." Her hands trembled. "You keep saying that, but every time you refuse to explain it feels more and more like you're using me." Using him. He stepped toward her, but she backed away. She didn't see the flicker of panic in his eyes. Hours later, she couldn't stop thinking about her father, the stranger's words, Aiden's evasions, the conversation she overheard. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. She needed answers, and she knew Aiden wasn't going to give them willingly. That was when she remembered the key card. One of the maids had slipped into her hand earlier, whispering, "If you want the truth, this opens the side archive. I'm not supposed to help you." At the time, it seemed like an act of pity. Now it felt like fate. She crept down the silent hallway to the lower level of the mansion. The archive room was colder than the rest of the house, filled with rows of hard drives, binders, and sealed boxes. She found a file labeled with her father's name. Her knees nearly gave out. She opened it with shaking hands. The first page hit her like a blow. Her father's signature at the bottom of an old financial report. A red-stamped accusation, funds misappropriated, cause Knight Corporation losses. "No," she whispered. "He wouldn't. He couldn't." She flipped through more pages, pictures, documents, transaction logs, all pointing at her father, all damning. Then a photograph slipped out. Her father, standing beside the man who'd been stalking her. Her vision blurred. The room tilted. It couldn't be real. It shouldn't be real. But the evidence stared back like a blade pressed to her throat. Footsteps sounded behind her. She turned. Aiden. His face went white when he saw the file. "You weren't supposed to find that," he said quietly. She held up the photograph with a shaking hand. "So, it's true. My father betrayed you, betrayed your company. That's not..." She stepped back, tears burning. "And I'm the debt he has to pay off, right? That's why you want me at your side for leverage, for revenge." Aiden closed his eyes briefly as if in pain. "You're wrong. Then what is the truth?" There was a long beat of silence before he said, "If you knew, it would destroy you." She flinched. "Stop deciding what I can or cannot handle," she snapped. "I deserve the truth." He reached for her hand. She pulled away as if burned. "Don't touch me." His expression cracked just for a moment before the cold mask slid back into place. "Give me the file," he said softly. "It's misleading." "Misleading?" Her voice trembled with fury. "It shows my father working with the man who's been stalking me." Aiden froze. His eyes flashed with something sharp: fear, anger, desperation. "Where is he?" Aiden demanded. "Did he speak to you tonight?" "Why do you care?" she whispered. "Because that man is dangerous." A tear spilled down her cheek. "And you're not." He exhaled a strained sound as if her words struck deeper than any blow. An hour later, she was back in her room when her phone buzzed with another anonymous message. The file you found is real. Your father is more involved than you think, and Aiden Knight will use you to break him. Her heart hollowed out. She grabbed a suitcase, dumping clothes into it without thinking. She couldn't stay here. She couldn't breathe in this mansion of secrets and lies. She made it to the back exit, but the moment she stepped outside, headlights blazed to life. A black van screeched to a stop. 2 men jumped out. "Come with us," one growled, yanking her arm. "Your father wants to see you." "No, let go," she cried, struggling. They dragged her toward the van. Then a car slammed to a halt beside them. Aiden stepped out. His face was carved from fury and fear. "Who gave you permission to touch her?" he said, voice like ice. The men backed away instantly. She stared at him, breathless, shaking, torn between terror and confusion. "Are you here to rescue me?" she whispered, "or drag me back into your game?" He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said more than words ever could. He was terrified of losing her. Rain streaked across the windshield of Aiden's car as he pulled her inside, slamming the door shut with a force that rattled the frame. She pressed herself against the opposite seat, breath, ragged wrists aching where the men had grabbed her. Aiden's jaw was clenched so tightly she could see the muscle jumping. "You should never have left the house," he said, voice low and trembling with anger or fear. She couldn't tell. She hugged herself. "I had to. I need answers. This isn't the way to get them." "Oh, really?" Her voice cracked. "Because staying with you has given me nothing except lies." He stared at her, something sharp flickering in his eyes, hurt, frustration, guilt, but he said nothing. A moment later, the car pulled away from the curb. Silence settled between them, thick and suffocating. Back at the mansion, he ordered the guards away and escorted her inside as if she were glass about to shatter. He guided her into the living room, then stepped back, pacing once, twice. When he turned toward her, the anger had drained, replaced by a heaviness she'd never seen on him. "What happened out there," he said quietly, "should tell you enough about the people watching you." Her voice wavered. "Why do they want me?" His gaze locked onto hers. "Because of your father." "Stop saying that," she snapped. "Stop hiding behind that. If my father is in danger, tell me why. Tell me what he did. Tell me why they're after him." Aiden inhaled sharply as if bracing himself. "Your father refused a deal years ago. A deal with dangerous people. They've been looking for ways to break him ever since. So you're saying he's innocent?" "I'm saying," Aiden replied, voice softer, "that he tried to protect the wrong people. And it backfired." She stepped closer. "Then why does everything I find make it look like he's guilty?" He went still. "That file," she said shakily, "the one with the accusations, they were convincing Aiden. Too convincing. That file," he said through clenched teeth, "was altered. The original evidence is sealed." "Why sealed? Why hide it?" He didn't answer. Her stomach twisted. Every silence from him felt like betrayal. She stormed toward the library, needing to breathe, needing space. He followed her, but kept his distance as if he knew if he got too close she might break. "You can't keep me here," she said, turning to face him. "You can't lock me up and call it protection. It's not about locking you up." "Then what is it about?" she whispered. "Control, power, revenge." His jaw tightened. "Keeping you alive." She almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "I didn't realize being alive included being tracked, shadowed, and monitored it like a criminal." "I didn't realize you preferred being kidnapped in parking lots," he countered, stepping closer, despite himself. Her breath hitched. "You don't understand the threat," he said, voice dropping, "or what they're willing to do. Then explain it to me." "I can't." That was the breaking point. She shoved past him, heading for the door. He caught her wrist, not harshly but desperately, his fingers trembling. "Don't walk away from me." "Why not?" she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "What am I to you, Aiden? A pawn, a liability, a bargaining chip tied to my father." His grip loosened. "You're the only thing." He stopped, jaw flexing. "You're the only leverage they think they can use against him." Her heart twisted at the phrasing. Not the only person he cared about. Not the person he wanted to protect. Leverage. The word stabbed deeper than she expected. She pulled her hand free. "Then maybe I shouldn't be near you at all." His expression faltered, something raw flashing across it before he looked away. Late that night, unable to sleep, she drifted outside to the patio. The pool lights glowed softly, casting ripples across the water. For a moment she let herself breathe. Then she saw him, the shadowed man from the event, standing just beyond the gates again, watching her. Her blood turned cold. He raised a hand slowly and mimed the movement of a zipper across his lips as if warning her to stay quiet. Then he backed into the dark and disappeared. She stumbled backward, crashing into a chair. "You shouldn't be out here alone." She whirled around. Aiden stood a few feet behind her, gaze fixed on the spot where the stranger had vanished. "Why does he keep coming after me?" she whispered. "Because he wants something he thinks your father has." "What is it?" Aiden's throat worked. "Evidence." "Evidence of what?" He hesitated too long. She took a step toward him. "My father is missing, isn't he?" Aiden swallowed. He slipped from the security team tonight. Her knees nearly buckled. Slipped, or was he taken? "We don't know yet." "When were you planning to tell me?" she demanded. "When it was safe." "It's never safe," she cried, "and you're the only one who knows what's going on." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration pouring off him. "You have no idea how dangerous this is for you." "Then tell me if I do," he said quietly. "You'll never be able to go back to the life you had." She stared at him, heart pounding. "Maybe I don't have a life anymore." Silence stretched between them like a wound. He approached her slowly, carefully, as if she were something fragile. "Your father didn't betray me," he said. "He saved me, and it cost him everything." Her breath caught. "Saved you how?" "He refused to sign a document that would have destroyed hundreds of people, including me. And because he refused, they went after him. They still are." She felt the world tilt beneath her. "So why drag me into this?" she whispered. His voice cracked. "Because protecting him wasn't enough. They came after you, and I couldn't let them." Her lips parted, confusion and fear swirling inside her. "But you said you used me," she whispered. His eyes closed briefly. "I used my power, my resources, my company, everything I had to shield you from them." Her throat tightened. "But you never said that." "If I had," he said softly, "you would have tried to run." She stepped back, tears brimming. "You don't get to decide what I run from." He took a breath as if bracing for the blow he knew was coming. "We just got a call," he said. "Your father? He's disappeared." Her heart stopped, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw Aiden Knight completely undone. Fear carved into his features, breathing uneven. "We have to find him," he whispered. "Before they do." Her legs gave way, and the chapter closed with the truth she couldn't outrun. She was never the target. Her father was, and she was the bait. The walls of the penthouse were too white, too bright, too silent, like a cage built out of luxury. Aiden closed the door behind them, locking it with a coded panel she didn't recognize. She wrapped her arms around herself as he crossed the room, every step precise, controlled, as if he were holding the night together by force. "You're staying here until we find him," he said. "Against my will," she shot back. He didn't flinch. "Against theirs." Her pulse skittered. "You still haven't told me who they are." "And I won't," he said, turning to the wall of windows. "Not until you're safe." Safe. The word meant nothing anymore, not with her father missing, and a stranger stalking her like prey. She paced the living area, trying to swallow the knot in her throat. The penthouse felt like another world, sleek, guarded, silent, but not comforting. Not with the alarms on the doors and cameras hidden like watchful ghosts. "Why here?" she asked. "Why not the mansion? Because they can get to you there," he said, without turning. "They've already tried." Her stomach dropped. "The men who took me, were they working for the same person who's been watching me?" He exhaled through his nose, jaw tight. "Yes. And you knew." He finally faced her. "I suspected." She laughed softly, bitterly. "Suspected? Right." He approached her slowly. "I didn't tell you because knowing their methods would terrify you." "It already does," she whispered. He closed his eyes briefly, the muscles in his face tightening. "I know." The silence stretched until she couldn't bear it. She moved to the center island where a thick folder sat one of the files his assistant had handed her earlier. It was filled with grainy security photos of her father, timestamps, locations, scribbled notes in Aiden's handwriting. "He's been followed for months," she murmured. Aiden placed a hand on the counter beside her. "Yes, you knew this." "Yes, you didn't tell me." He hesitated. I didn't want you contacting him. It would have put him in more danger. Her breath hitched. So your solution was to lock me away and pretend ignorance. I wasn't pretending. You were hiding. Their eyes collided, hers filled with accusation, his with something that looked like regret carved too deep to hide. What are they after? She demanded. What do they want from him? Aiden didn't move. Tell me, she pressed. Evidence, he said at last. Evidence that could destroy their entire empire. She staggered a step back. And they think he still has it. He might. Her heart hammered. So they took him to force him to give it up or to silence him before he can. She shook her head, tears prickling. You should have told me. You weren't ready for the truth. You don't get to decide that. He clenched his jaw. I did it to protect you. That's what you always say, she whispered. But somehow I'm the one who keeps getting hurt. A muscle ticked in his cheek. You're not the only one. Something fragile inside her cracked at the vulnerability in his voice. Hours passed. Neither of them slept. Aiden worked in terse silence at the dining table, making calls, checking intel, coordinating with security teams. She sat curled on the sofa, unable to focus on anything but her father's last message, his desperate voice urging her to run. Run from who? From what? From Aiden. Her phone buzzed. She froze. The number was blocked. With trembling hands, she answered. Dad, she whispered. Static crackled. A muffled voice followed. Stay away from them. You have to get out. Get out of where Dad. Where are you? Don't trust. A thud, a curse, then silence. Dad, Dad, she cried into the phone. Aiden was already on his feet. He crossed the room in 2 strides and took the phone gently but firmly from her hands. Don't, she whispered. Give it back. He looked at the screen, analyzing it. They cut the line. Give it back, she repeated louder. We can use this to trace the call. I don't care about that. I need to hear his voice. You won't, he said, softer but unyielding. Not through this line. Her knees buckled as grief surged up her throat. She sank onto the sofa, covering her face with both hands. Aiden stood there for a long moment, watching her shake with silent sobs. Then, as if some invisible thread pulled him, he lowered himself to sit beside her, leaving only a breath of space. I know what you think of me, he murmured. I know you think I used you. She didn't look up. But that night, he continued, voice low, when you agreed to the contract. I wasn't thinking about business. I was thinking about the only way I could legally protect you. She stiffened. Why me? Why not protect my father directly? Because he refused protection, Aiden said. He refused money, help, everything. The only thing he asked for was time. Time for what Aiden exhaled. Pain flickered across his features. To figure out how to keep you safe without dragging you into this. Her heart twisted. He thought keeping you away from me would keep you alive. Aiden whispered. He was wrong. They found you anyway. She looked at him, then really looked. His hair was disheveled, his shirt rumpled, his eyes raw with exhaustion and something deeper. You should have told me, she said. I know, he answered quietly. She swallowed. What now? His gaze hardened with resolve. Now I find him. How any way I have to. Before she could reply, a loud buzz rattled through the penthouse. Aiden shot to his feet. He checked the security monitor, his face drained of color. What is it? She whispered. He didn't answer. He only whispered her name softly, urgently, as if preparing her for something terrible. Then he pressed a button showing live security footage. The man from the grocery store was standing in the lobby, smiling, waiting, and holding something in his hand, her father's wedding ring. The world dropped out from beneath her. She gasped, choking on air. Aiden's eyes hardened into steel. Stay behind me, he said. She didn't know if he meant physically or for the rest of their lives. All she knew was this. Their nightmare had only just begun. She didn't remember opening the penthouse door, only the cold rush of air and the thundering of her heartbeat as Aiden dragged her back by the wrist. Stay behind me, he ordered, but she barely heard him. Her eyes were locked on the man in the lobby, the man who'd stalked her for days, the man holding her father's wedding ring between 2 fingers like a trophy. He smiled up at the security camera, lifted the ring to his lips, and kissed it. Her stomach twisted violently. Aiden swore under his breath and strode toward the elevator, forcing her to follow. The guards rushed to flank them, forming a tight formation around her, as if she were a target painted in red. The elevator doors shut. Silence crashed down. Then Aiden said softly, "This ends tonight." The van used for transport was armored, tinted, and silent. She sat between two guards in the back, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Aiden was in the front seat, speaking into his phone, giving rapid-fire orders she couldn't understand. Every few seconds he glanced back at her. She avoided his eyes. The world outside blurred into streaks of darkness and neon. She didn't know where they were going, only that the air felt heavy, like the night itself was holding its breath. Finally, the van pulled into a derelict industrial district. The buildings were abandoned windows, shattered graffiti covering the walls. The van stopped in front of an old warehouse with rusted doors and broken lamps. "Stay between the guards," Aiden said. "Do not move unless I tell you to." "What if he has my father?" she whispered. Aiden's jaw clenched. "Then I'll take him back." The certainty in his voice sent something sharp through her chest. The metal doors screeched open, and they stepped inside. A single spotlight illuminated the center of the warehouse. A chair sat beneath it, a chair meant for her. The stalker stepped into the light with slow, theatrical steps, clapping lightly. "Took you long enough," he said. "I was beginning to think night wasn't coming." Aiden stepped forward. "Let her go." The man laughed. "Let her go, Knight. I'm not holding her. She came because she's desperate. Desperate for answers you refuse to give." Her breath caught. "Where is my father?" "Oh, he's alive," the man said casually. "For now." Aiden lunged forward, but the man raised a single finger. Ah. One more step and the old man doesn't make it to sunrise." The guards froze. Aiden froze. The man turned his gaze on her. "Tell me, sweetheart," he said softly. "Do you know who destroyed your father's life?" Her voice trembled. "You?" He laughed again, eyes glittering. "No, I only finished the job." But the first blow, he pointed at Aiden, came from him. Aiden's shoulders stiffened, but he said nothing. "Would you like to hear the truth?" the man asked. "Since your fiancé refuses to speak." Her pulse hammered against her ribs. "Tell me." The man leaned forward, expression sharpening. "Your father was the only one with proof of our family's crimes, the only one brave enough to stand against us. He refused our bribe, refused our threats, so we framed him, we ruined him." Her knees weakened. "You framed him?" "Yes," he said proudly. "And Knight here, he found out, years ago." Her head snapped toward Aiden. His face was carved from ice. He knew she whispered, knew the stalker echoed with a grin. "He paid to hide the evidence. He paid to keep your father out of prison. He paid to keep him alive. But he never told you. Never told your father why." The room tilted. "No," she whispered. Aiden helped. The man's laughter echoed off the walls. He fell in love with the idea of being a hero. Tried to save your father, tried to save you, but the truth. His voice dropped to a hiss. Knight destroyed his own company protecting a man who wasn't even grateful. She shook her head. "My father would have thanked him. He didn't know," the man said. "Knight never told him. Because Knight wanted your father indebted, wanted leverage, wanted you." Aiden finally spoke, voice low and lethal. "Enough." The man tilted his head mockingly. "Why embarrassed? She knows you chose her for a reason." Aiden stepped forward with quiet fury. "She doesn't need your poison. She needs truth," the man snapped. "Something you seem allergic to." She swallowed hard. "If Aiden didn't ruin my father, who did?" The man smirked. "My family, my people, the same ones who want you dead." Her whole body went cold. Because he added with a smirk, "Your father still has something we need. And you're bait. Perfect bait." Her legs wavered. Then he dropped the final dagger. "You think the documents you found were real? My people altered them. We planted the photo you saw. We sent the messages. Every misunderstanding." He tapped his temple. "Curated, crafted, designed." She stared at him numb. "You believed every lie," he said gently, "because you wanted to." Her chest tightened painfully. In the recording, she whispered, "The one where Aiden cut, spliced, rearranged." He smirked. I'm a master at misdirection. She felt sick. Aiden, she whispered, voice breaking. Why didn't you tell me? He stepped toward her, eyes burning with something raw. Because every time I tried, I saw how much it hurt you. The man rolled his eyes. How noble. Aiden ignored him. And because once you knew the truth, they would come for you harder. Her eyes filled with tears. Aiden took another step. I was wrong. I should have told you everything. But I was afraid of what she whispered. His answer was barely audible. Of losing you. The stalker groaned loudly. Enough of this romance. Let's end the night properly. He raised a gun. Aiden moved instantly, shoving her behind him. The gunshot exploded through the warehouse, and the chapter ended with her scream and Aiden collapsing to his knees, blood blooming through his shirt. The gunshot cracked through the warehouse like lightning splitting the night. She dropped to her knees before she even realized she'd moved her hands, already reaching for Aiden as he collapsed forward. Blood soaked through his shirt in a blooming, terrifying red. No. Aiden! Her voice fractured as she held his shoulders, trying to stop him from falling. He forced himself upright, staggering as he pulled her behind a concrete pillar. Stay back, he rasped. I won't leave you. You're not leaving, he said, eyes blazing despite the pain. You're surviving. The stalker laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. Touching, but pointless. Aiden's guards burst through the side entrance, weapons drawn. Gunfire erupted. The warehouse filled with chaos, shouts, ricochets, metal clanging. But all she saw was Aiden. He struggled to stay upright, bracing himself against the pillar, breath shuddering. She pressed her trembling hands over his wound, her fingers slick with his blood. Don't talk, she whispered. Don't move, help is coming. He gave a strained, crooked smile. You're shaking. Because you're bleeding, she choked. Because you're hurt. Because this is my fault. His hand rose, weak but determined, brushing her cheek. No, you did nothing wrong. Everything I did to protect you. Tears blurred her vision. You didn't tell me the truth. I know, he whispered. I should have. I was afraid you'd run, and I needed you close to keep you safe. Gunfire cracked again, closer this time. One of the guards dragged her father into the clearing, alive, barely conscious, but alive. She sobbed with relief. Aiden exhaled shakily. Good. They found him. Don't close your eyes, she pleaded. I'm not. His eyelids fluttered. Not until I know you're safe. Another wave of gunfire. A howl of pain. One of the stalker's men went down. The stalker cursed and sprinted toward the back exit. Aiden pushed off the pillar. Stay here. She grabbed him. You can't fight. His voice cut through her panic like steel. He won't stop. Not until I end this. Before she could hold him back, he pushed forward, stumbling but relentless. She followed at a distance as security stormed after the stalker. They cornered him near the loading dock, red lights flashing across broken windows. The stalker raised his weapon. Aiden fired first. The man dropped the gun, clattering to the ground. Silence swallowed the warehouse. Aiden sagged, knees buckling. She rushed to him, catching him before he hit the floor. He leaned into her breath, shallow pain carved deep into every line of his face. You're safe, he murmured. He can't hurt you now. She held his face between her palms. You risked everything. His eyes softened darker than she'd ever seen them. I fell for you, before I even knew what it meant. Her breath caught. You were never a pawn, he whispered. You were the only thing I couldn't afford to lose. She pressed her forehead to his, her voice breaking. Then don't leave me. I'm not going anywhere, he said, and for the first time there was no distance in his voice, no armor, no walls, just truth. Paramedics rushed in, guards parted. Her father reached her side, placing a trembling hand on her shoulder. He saved you, he whispered. Just like he saved me. They lifted Aiden onto a stretcher. She didn't let go of his hand until they insisted. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and quiet hope. She sat beside Aiden's bed for hours, watching the slow rise and fall of his chest. His hand lay in hers warm, despite the bandages and IV lines. When his eyes finally opened, soft and confused, she let out a breath she felt she'd been holding for years. You stayed, he whispered. Always, she said. He gave a weak smile. The contract. She reached into her bag, pulled out the torn remains he'd once signed. This doesn't matter anymore. What do we call this then? He murmured. She intertwined their fingers. A choice. He closed his eyes, not in pain, but in peace. Her father stood at the door watching them with quiet gratitude and for the first time in a long while, relief. Together they'd survive the storm. Now they could choose what came next. She helped him leave the hospital days later, guiding him into the sunlight. He leaned on her, only slightly determined but human in ways he'd never shown before. The world felt different, softer, real. Theirs. Aiden looked at her voice, quieter than the wind. We start fresh, she smiled. We already have. He took her hand, not as part of an act, not for the cameras, not because of a contract, but because he wanted to. And she held on because she did too. If you've stayed with this story until the very end, thank you. Stories like this remind us that love isn't born from perfection. It's forged in the moments we choose to stay, even when it's hard, even when the truth hurts. Tell me in the comments, do you think Aiden and her deserve the second chance? Would you have forgiven him? If you want more stories filled with mystery, heartbreak, healing, and love that defies the odds, make sure you follow and stay connected. Your presence here keeps these stories alive, and I can't wait to share the next journey with you.